Hello and a very good morning to you. You're very welcome to this EPA-hosted Forum on Food Waste 2021. This year we are calling it Countdown to 2030, Building Knowledge to Waste Less. My name is Philip Boucher-Hayes. You're very, very welcome here if you are returning to this sort of, by this stage, biennial event. And if it's your first time coming along, you will learn that this is really the kind of best one-stop shop going for keeping abreast of developments in the food waste sector. We get to see once every 2 years what progress has been made, what more needs to be done, and some of the most interesting best practices that are being engaged with abroad. We meet this year now, virtually, unfortunately, at a very, very important juncture. I've just come back from Glasgow, from the climate conference, COP26, where you will no doubt know the EU-US methane initiative. The global methane pledge has been signed up to by almost 100 countries at this stage. And it puts this issue of food waste much, much higher up the international political agenda than it has ever been before. Because I had assumed initially that this was just going to be an initiative about preventing venting and flaring in the fossil fuel extraction industry. But when I read the documents, I was really quite amazed to see that there is an allocation for rotting food in landfill. How do we prevent it from getting there? How do we minimize the impacts of it once it is there? So that makes this moment in time, the food waste agenda, a point in time when I think more is going to be expected and asked of everybody along the supply chain, but also it's going to be the best moment and the best point in which you can make the argument about the need for greater resources, for greater support, and for more research. And a lot has happened, thankfully, in Ireland in the food waste sphere under the stewardship of the EPA in the course of the last year. Much greater involvement of primary producers, processors, producers, retailers. And we have, I think, as you will learn today, a much, much better handle on the scale of the problem now than we did before. And there's a number of very interesting new initiatives to tackle food waste that we're going to hear about today. I want to, throughout the course of this conference, though, engage with you and you to engage with us by using Slido. You're, of course, watching this, you'll appreciate now, on Slido, but there are, if you're watching on a phone, there are tabs above my head. If you're looking at it on a laptop, there's tabs to one side or the other, which are for both a poll and for Q&A. The Q&As are questions that you can put into us at any point during the conference, and I will put to our panelists in sessions at the end of their keynote speeches. But also there's a couple of poll questions that we are very interested to get answers and your input on, please. And the first of those is one that you will have seen on your screen already. We'd like to know how many of you are involved with or employed by companies that are currently measuring your waste. If perhaps you're an academic, you're in your university and you don't know, just leave it aside, or your student, maybe if you're in a government department, don't answer this particular one. But if you are in a company that is measuring its waste, please do let us know. It would be interesting to see what proportion of you are actually engaged in actively weighing at the moment. That's going to go on throughout the course of the conference. There'll be a few more questions, different polls that I'll keep on returning to, but please do engage with that in those tabs either above or to your side. To kick us off and get things underway now, I would like, without messing around any longer, to introduce to you the Director of Environmental Sustainability at the Environmental Protection Agency, Sharon Finegan. Good morning to you, Sharon.
Good morning, Philip. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Food Waste Forum. This is our fourth forum and our first virtual one. And I'm pleased to see the high level of interest, I suppose, reflecting the recognition of, number one, this is an important issue, and of course, the quality of the speakers that we have with us today. So that's very welcome. The event is brought to you through the EPA's National Waste Prevention Programme, which is soon to become the Circular Economy Programme. Our new programme will be launched by the end of this month, and it builds on 15 years of leadership by the EPA on waste prevention, which began when Ireland first launched the National Waste Prevention Programme, which was the first one in Europe. 15 years ago. So food waste will continue to be a priority topic within that new programme. When we first came together in December 2014, food waste was not high on the agenda. Then in 2015, Ireland, along with 200 other countries, signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And since then, SDG 12.3 has been really the driving force for action around the world, setting a target by 2030 to halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. This ambition is reflected in EU legislation, including the Waste Framework Directive and indeed the Farm to Fork strategy. And as mandatory reporting on food waste comes into force with 2020 data due by mid-2022, the European Commission has also started to look at setting a binding target on food waste reduction for member states that will be aligned to the SDG one. With a short time frame to 2030, action is urgent, so it is important we all work together to focus on our efforts where it matters. So the theme of this year's event, as Philip was just outlining, is building knowledge to waste less. And that emphasises the importance of building an evidence base for action by measuring food waste consistently and how insights from improved data will inform actions and identify opportunities for targeted waste reduction all along the supply chain. Like many environmental issues, finding good quality data may not always be straightforward. And today you'll hear from industry speakers about practical experiences in relation to measuring and reducing food waste. And as Philip said, our poll is also in that area, and we look forward to hearing your insights in that. For our part, a key focus on the food waste prevention programme is to improve data quality and availability and to build capacity for food waste prevention in the supply chain. This year, we published a report drawing together the most recent information on food waste across the supply chain in Ireland. The report includes a first statement on Ireland's best estimates of food waste data required under the revised Waste Framework Directive, using 2018 data to test approaches and methodologies and to identify those data gaps. Today, you'll hear more about our work to develop a standardised food waste measurement methodology for businesses, currently being tested in the bakery, seafood and prepared food sectors, and a measurement pathway to less food waste for hospitality and food service businesses. And you'll hear results from studies undertaken to improve the granularity of data and address data gaps. On that note, we'll hear results from EPA-funded research projects on food loss and waste from agriculture, aquaculture, and fisheries. This is the first time we've had an indication of figures from the primary production sector in Ireland, and this study provides a starting point to understand the nature and extent of the issues and indeed to identify solutions. Over the next few years, we will continue our work to improve knowledge, data and support behaviour change by developing and promoting guidance and tools to support food waste reduction across the supply chain, in hospitality and indeed in our homes. And we will continue to lead through the food waste prevention programme, but we cannot do it alone. We welcome the development of the National Food Waste Prevention Roadmap being prepared by the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, and have been providing ongoing expert input into that process. The roadmap will strengthen the work of the Food Waste Prevention Programme, scaling up its reach and ensuring it continues to play a central role in meeting food waste prevention targets. I suppose it takes a lot of resources to put food on our tables. Growing, processing, and transporting food all use huge amounts of material and energy. When food is wasted, these resources are also wasted, not just the food itself. And that impacts on climate change, our local environment and business costs. And as Philip has said at the outset, it is timely that today's event falls in the middle of COP26 in Glasgow. With wasted food responsible for about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, reducing food waste will play a key role in the transition to climate neutrality. And whether your motivator to measure food waste is to understand what happens in terms of tonnes or euros or indeed greenhouse gas emissions, we look forward to industry scaling up actions and playing its part in meeting this national challenge. I hope you'll find today interesting and an informative event and encourage you to contribute in the discussion throughout the morning. Many thanks, and back to you, Philip.
Sharon, thank you very much. So as you see, there really is an enormous amount to get through between now and 1 o'clock. Before we actually get underway, I want to ask one more poll question of you, please. Again, that's to the top or one side or the other, depending on which way around your computer is turned. Please tell us what it is that motivated you to get involved in either reducing or measuring or analysing your food waste. 4 different reasons there. Give us the top 2 reasons only so that we get some sense of what are the greatest priorities for you in addressing food waste. Now, it is unfortunately a long time since we have all gathered for this food waste forum. It was interrupted obviously by the pandemic, and a lot has happened. A lot has happened on the regulatory front, a lot has happened in terms of data analysis, because as little as 3 years ago, we were really still kind of sticking a finger in the air when it came to looking at or estimating what the overall amount of greenhouse gases generated from food waste were. But now the analysis brings us an awful lot closer to a proper, holistic, comprehensive understanding of how big this problem is and how we go about tackling it. And the person who has this knowledge, who possesses it all at the moment, is the EPA's Food Waste Project Lead, Odile Le Bolloch, who is going to be our first speaker this morning. She is, I think, virtually the only person who is not attending virtually here today. She's here with me, so I'm going to give the podium to her. Odile, good morning.
Thanks, Philip. Good morning, everybody. For those who don't know me, yes, I'm Odile Le Bolloch. I am from the EPA's Waste Prevention Programme. If I could have my slides, please. Thank you very much. I'm just going to talk to you a bit about some of the developments we've been doing in the last while in gaining data and insights on food waste. I suppose we've always talking about you can't manage what you don't measure, and really we need some facts and figures that will help us understand what we need to be doing when it comes to food waste. Most of you will already know we signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, and obviously, you know, the imperative to reduce food waste, the ambition in the Sustainable Development Goals has actually been, you know, leading the world in taking action when it comes to food waste. Obviously, we have actions need to follow the food waste hierarchy, where prevention is at the top of the hierarchy, and it is actually prevention that is going to reduce food waste. So we always need to keep in mind that that's where we need to be when it comes to looking at food waste. As Philip mentioned, over the last few years, there's been huge developments when it comes to policy. We have at EU level, we have the Green Deal, and coming from that, we have the Circular Economy Action Plan, Farm to Fork, and then obviously we have the Core Waste Framework Directive, which requires reporting by member states, and it also requires member states to have a food waste prevention programme. And these policies have been reflected back down in national policy. We have a new circular economy bill and an associated strategy that's due in the next few weeks. We have the Waste Action Plan that was issued last year. We have a climate action plan that's imminent. And then obviously, you know, food waste is also linked to a sustainable food supply chain. So there's things like, you know, the agriculture, the Food Vision 2030 and Ag Climatize. And I think one of the really welcome developments that was mentioned in the Waste Action Plan and is about to be realised is this development of a national food waste prevention roadmap. And this is currently being drafted. Some key organisations have been providing input to it, including ourselves, and we believe that is due to be going out for public consultation in the coming weeks. And I suppose the important thing to know in that roadmap is the commitment to reducing food waste by 50% remains a key aim for the department, and the roadmap will reaffirm this commitment. So I mentioned you know, what has happened is in terms of the reporting, we need to report on food waste to the European Commission. We need to report in the 5 categories that are in the table here: primary production, process and manufacturing, retail and distribution, restaurants and food service, and households. And I suppose the idea of this is that as member states start to report, the data will start to improve, and a better picture, data will be more comparable between countries, and a better picture will start to rise. Because as usual, you know, you're starting at a point where nobody really knows exactly what is out there, what's being thrown away. So what we decided to do in anticipation of this reporting, the first reporting year is 2020 data, and it's due to be submitted in the middle of next year. But in anticipation, we did have access to 2018 data. So we decided to start plugging it into a table and have a look at and see what it looks like. The idea being that it would give us an idea of the quality of the data that we do have, and it would also help us identify gaps of, where we need to start looking to gather data, things that we mightn't already have. And I suppose where you see there, we've also put sort of a traffic light system, because obviously down with households and also restaurants, food service, retail and distribution, we do have a tradition of collecting data from waste collectors and waste processors, and that actually gives us those numbers there. The processing and manufacturing data, some of that comes from EPA licensees, and obviously a high percentage of those would be food production industry would contribute to that data set. But then there's also data collected by the CSO, and that we feel at the moment that's based on list of waste codes, which mightn't be quite as accurate when it comes to food waste. It's quite a broad category, so that definitely needs something where we need to look at. And then traditionally there wouldn't be, we wouldn't have a long reporting history in relation to primary production sector. That would be the agriculture, aquaculture and fisheries sector. But you'll hear from Jennifer, who a little bit, who has finished an EPA-funded research project that has actually put together some preliminary data in that sector. So we've already identified a gap and filled it, which is good news. So the EPA Waste Prevention Programme, as Sharon mentioned, it's implemented through the National Waste Prevention Programme, which is soon to become Circular Economy Programme. The programme has 3 strands. We focus on addressing food waste in the household sector, in the supply chain, and also in hospitality. And then underpinning all of that, our work, really important, is to gather data and insights that inform the actions that we undertake in those areas. Over the last few years, we underwent a review by RAP in the UK, and basically the outcome of that just helped us maybe have more of an idea of that we need to focus more on where the programme can make the biggest impact. And obviously the really key element is to build measurement and monitoring into the heart of the programme. So this is what we've spent the last couple of years doing, is addressing those data issues, trying to understand a bit more about where we need to go to get data, and also to conduct things like sectoral studies, which will help, with understanding some of the areas, give us a bit more granularity in particular areas, and also then, as I mentioned before, fill in some of those blanks in the table that we have. We also, obviously, there's other work that needs to be done. Definitely linking food waste to carbon emissions is a piece of work. There is some data out there, but it can be quite old, and obviously it depends on the type of food. So that would be an area that we'd be pushing, where research is needed. And then obviously things like technical solutions in terms of addressing food waste, and also then developing markets for unavoidable food waste as well, and even for products that might help to reduce food waste too. And then through all of this, we collaborate, we participate on the European platform for food loss and waste, and we've also participated in European projects before, and this just helps us keep abreast of best practice and current developments, and we're also then able to contribute the insights that we get from the work that we're doing too. And I think one of the things that is falling through with all of this work that we are doing is that consistency and measurement to ensure that we're all talking about the same thing is essential. Just in terms of the food supply chain, I suppose here we've identified some of the area here is that for now we've kind of become aware that in areas that figure that we have there is likely, it could be an overestimate or it could be an underestimate. The number is quite variable, and what we do find here is that obviously the industry isn't homogenous. So what we're trying to do here is we've been looking at developing a standard measurement protocol, and Sharon mentioned at the moment that's currently being tested in the bakery, the seafood and the prepared food sector. And the idea being that it just follows a consistent way to look at your food waste and measure it by weight, so that yet again we are all sure that we're talking about the same thing. Helen will talk a little bit more about that later, my colleague Helen, so I won't go into too much detail, but I think one of the key things that we're finding out here is obviously, we need to get together to discuss and work together for solutions. We need to demonstrate some good practice, and hopefully you'll hear about some of that today. But we also need to scale the effort. It's, having sort of small, localized efforts is not going to make the impact that we need. So I think really what's needed, and this will come out in the roadmap as well, is just this element of how we bring together people, and bring businesses together that will actually start to take concerted action to reduce their food waste. And this could probably be through a mechanism like a voluntary agreement. And in fact, the Food Waste Charter has experience in this area. And in fact, I just wanted to share with this an example of how the voluntary agreement worked. We signed the food waste, five of the main retailers signed the Food Waste Charter back in 2017, and together they have been working with us to improve the data and reporting on food waste in their businesses. And in 2019, we were actually, for the first time ever, able to pull together all that data and scale it up for the whole of the country. And I think, this is the first time that we've actually got the snapshot of food waste in the retail sector. And you can see that 1.8% of food offered for sale in Irish supermarkets was unsold. Food donation was a significant route, with over 2,000 tonnes donated, which is equivalent to 5 million meals. And then you can also see here just a description of the categories. There's no real surprises there. The very perishable items are the things that are being wasted. And then I suppose one of the other things that we just brought in as well from our waste characterisation studies, we do know that segregation of food waste is an area for improvement in that sector. There's still around 40% of food waste in the mixed residual bin and some in the recycling bin. But I think this is a really good example of how a sectoral group has come together, discussed common issues, and also just agreed a consistency in approach. And finally, we've received data at the end of it, which gives it more insight than anyone knew at the beginning. So I think, it's a really nice illustration of how we can work together to make some impact. In terms of the hospitality and food services sector, obviously we appreciate that sector has gone through very difficult 18 months. And so we have been working, just to develop some fact sheets and guidance, because obviously food waste is a significant cost for businesses, and reducing food waste is actually a way to reduce those costs. So we have produced some fact sheets and guidance that are available. I've put a link on the slide there, and these have been informed by the commercial food waste study, which was presented at the last forum, and you can find it on our website if you didn't make it to the last forum. But yet again, it's an example of there was data in that study that has informed these fact sheets and guidance. There's kind of benchmarks there now for businesses to assess how they are doing, how they compare. And then obviously, because food isn't the only thing in these businesses, we have done waste management, energy and water guidance as well in those fact sheets. And then I just wanted to mention our work on consumer behavioural insights, because that's a really important piece of work that we are doing through our Stop Food Waste programme. In 2020, we did a very important behavioural insights study, and it was our first time really, I suppose, getting down to the kind of the real information stuff that we kind of knew by instinct. We're now it's beginning to feed back through in our study that we did. And what we did find, the very kind of top lines things were that people who think about food waste are more likely to adopt those good behaviours that lead to reduced waste in the home, which is actually a really important finding, because it supports the need for continuing to raise awareness and maintain the discussion around food waste, but around the positive behaviours that we can undertake. What we also found was that younger age groups say they would like to do something about food waste, but they don't know how. So yet again, that presents an opportunity for us, that you present easy tips for people, you know, and things that they can do tomorrow rather than make it complicated for them and maybe, you know, pick one thing. And then I think one of the other things that we found that was really interesting, we had planned a campaign last year around use, buy and best before dates, but actually we found through our survey that people have a really good understanding of those dates, but they were saying they still threw food away because they passed those dates. So we decided actually the campaign became about a behaviour, which was that you can freeze food right up until your use by date. And so that was kind of a change maybe in how we might have done that campaign based on the knowledge that we gained from the survey. And we ran a very effective, very small social media campaign, just targeting that younger, mainly male demographic around kind of linking food waste and climate action, because there was significant interest in climate action in that demographic. So I think it's a really good example of how this type of study and then a segmentation which associated with that, which helps us understand the hooks that we can use just to speak to certain targets in the, you know, certain sectors of the target audience, rather than speaking to everybody all the time. We can become a lot more refined in our messaging. So just to sum up, if you are looking for further information on any of those work, the slides will be available after the event. So I will just put the links are there for you to go. And the EPA food waste page will have definitely more information in relation to the policy developments and the events and things like that. And obviously we have our Stop Food Waste campaign, which is on stopfoodwaste.ie. And I would urge any of you, if you are interested in promoting messaging to consumers and householders, to get behind Stop Food Waste programme. So just to sum up, as we are looking towards heading towards 2030 and our target, last year we were saying 10 years, this year we're saying 9 years, so time is really moving very, very quickly. I think it's key that we are in quite a complex policy environment now. There's a lot of different elements. There's European policy, national policy, and different government departments involved. And I think it's really important that we all pull in the same direction. The roadmap is a very welcome step, because that'll provide that overarching approach, and it'll identify actors and actions. But the key challenge is to scale up those actions. I think actions also need to be linked to consistent measurement at national level, measurement to monitor progress towards and to establish sectoral benchmarks and targets, and how are we doing, are we going to get there? And then also at business level, good quality, consistent measurement will give you insights on issues, but it'll also allow for accountability in an era, and you're going to hear more about this, where consumers want businesses to be responsible and undertake good actions. And then for our part, we'll continue to lead with the food waste prevention programme, and in particular, we'll continue to try and improve the knowledge and the data, and we'll gather evidence. And we'll also support behaviour change by developing and promoting guidance and tools to support reduction across the supply chain, in hospitality and in our homes. And to bring about a change in society, we need to continue to highlight the positive behaviours through Stop Food Waste. And I'd urge you all to get behind the campaign to amplify the reach. Thank you.
Odile, thank you very much